The Mental Health Care Advance Directive is a very important topic to me, um, mostly because of the effect it's had on my life, the drastic change it's made in my life. Um, I've done several workshops teaching about the Advance Directive, and I have found a lot of consumers to be reluctant to actually fill out the paperwork, or for a variety of different reasons. Sometimes they just don't get it done. They don't realize how important it is. Um, a lot of consumers have had years of constantly having papers shoved in your face to sign, and you find out after a few years that you've signed away this and signed away that and signed away this right and that. And that's the way I initially felt it when I first heard about an advance directive. But you would have to understand my history. I had my first psychotic break in 1995, and for about 6 or 7 years after that, I was in and out of jail, in and out of state hospitals. And every consumer is a person first and not their illness. And as that, we all have our own little individual quirks, things, allergies, reactions, medical history, and there is no way that a provider could draw up a treatment plan for anybody and say this works with the vast majority of people and that doesn't, and we should do this and that and the other. It is very important that people prepare their advance directive while they are doing well. I did not say while they are well. Let me make this clear. I have schizophrenia and bipolar. To my knowledge, there is no cure for it. I can't say, well, when I get well, I'm going to take care of this and I'm going to take care of that. I may not ever be, quote, well or cured or healed from schizophrenia, but I am at most times functional. And to me, that is recovery, because you would have to see where I came from. There are very important things that your provider needs to know about you. Myself, for instance, when I am on the correct mix of antipsychotics, I take 3 different ones. I still have occasional hallucinations, even when I'm functional, and you can't tell by looking at me, you can't tell that either. But in some hospitals, most hospitals I would say, every day they pass out those papers that you fill out that ask you if you're hearing voices or if you're having hallucinations. And even at my best point, when I'm ready to leave the hospital, I may still be having hallucinations or hearing voices, and that leaves me 2 options. If I want to leave the hospital, I either have to lie about it, or because on my best days, I have hallucinations, and I deal with it and I handle it. And having a mental health care advance directive is the difference between your illness managing you or you managing your illness. There's a situation of learned dependence. Well, I'll just do my own thing, and if I get sick, somebody will take care of me. And somebody will make the decisions for me and everything. And having lived through believing that, and realizing that nobody can take better care of you than you, my advance directive has become so important to me. I carry it in the car with me. The last time I was in the hospital, it was my first good hospitalization experience with an advance directive. Under the community, the services I needed to get, the social worker checked other, and she wrote, patient can teach us. Because a lot of the psych meds have adverse effects on my neurological system, I would usually decompensate. And one time I was hospitalized, and I kept trying to tell the nurse, I can't feel my feet, I can't feel my feet. And she said, oh, honey, don't worry about that. We call that the Thorazine shuffle. And I tell people that now, and that nurse wasn't incompetent. That it wasn't that she did. There is a condition, thorazine can make people's gait change some, and they do refer to it as the thorazine shuffle. Unfortunately, that's not what was going on with me. It's your illness. Nobody can be responsible for the management of your illness other than you. If you don't step up and do it, then you can't really gripe a whole lot about the ways other people do it for you when you've never told them. Fear of having my power taken away, fear of being put places and given things and done things to, dealing with the fear of that happening again is probably as hard as the symptoms of my illness. And the last time I got sick, I called a real good friend, and I was crying, and I said, I've come so far, and now I'm going to go back, and I'm going to go in the hospital, and it's going to be 1.5 years before I get out, and I'm going to end up back in assisted living, and I'm going to have to start all over again. And she said, well, you have your Advance Directive, don't you? And I said, yeah. She said, pack your suitcase. And for the first time in the hospital, I had my own pajamas. I had my own pajamas. I did not have an old sweatsuit that somebody had donated to the mental hospital. And that sounds like a small thing probably to everybody else, but I had my pajamas and all of my personal things, and then right there on top of on the top part of my suitcase, I had my Advance Directive. And because my Advance Directive said no sedatives, that made it kind of inconvenient on the staff because I would not shut up. I was very hyperactive, and what they basically did with me was put me in the craft room for 8 or 9 hours a day and just let me do my own little thing, just work like a busy bee. And I crafted a little box while I was there. And because it was on my Advance Directive that I do have a history of Guillain-Barré syndrome, I put the name and contact information for my internist on there as well. And he actually came to the psych ward every day and drew blood and monitored every time they even changed milligrams on anything. He was right there, and my psychiatrist and my internist worked together. I do advise that you have a surrogate and an alternate surrogate, because when we're symptomatic, sometimes we might deal with one person better than another. If you have 2 surrogates named, you have an option there, and you still have your Advance Directive. Knowing that you have an Advance Directive and that you are still in control of things even when your life is totally out of control, I can't say enough how much power that gives you. But your Advance Directive can be changed. It's not written in stone. And if there's one thing I would like to get across to people is you are not signing away anything, you are keeping something. Mental health care Advance Directives are not giving the power to the consumers to override hospital staff and the rules. It is them allowing to put on paper and show the pieces of themselves that are there, and allow the staff in the hospital to see them as a person rather than an illness. And it benefits both sides so much. I was the first one on our local psych ward who had a mental health care Advance Directive, and they first looked at it and thought, no sedatives, how are we going to do this? I was there 2 weeks, and by the time I left, the little social worker who prepares the discharge packets told me that it had made their job so much easier that she was going to start including Advance Directive forms in each dismissal package. Filling out your Advance Directive is as big a part of any treatment that I have ever had. It is very therapeutic. Treatment is something that was done to you. And if you take back your power and your responsibility to manage your own illness and you have an Advance Directive, treatment is something that can be done for you.
For copies of the Advance Directive for Mental Health Treatment Form or assistance, contact Protection and Advocacy, P&A, at 1-800-372-2988 or on the web at www.kypa.net. Keyword Advocacy. Or contact the Kentucky Consumer Advocacy Network, KCAN, at 1-800-564-8034 or on the web at www.kycan.org.